Up on Game presents Taylor Scouting. With over 40 years in the scouting world, Coach Randy Taylor is on now.
This is Randy Taylor with Up on Game's Taylor Scouting Podcast. We're going to talk a lot about the recruiting process and the important parts that a family should know, that a college coach talks about, their back, the behind the scenes information. We're going to talk a lot about different things. We're going to cover some things about some NFL players and their recruiting stories. So there's a heck of a lot that we're going to get done on this podcast, and it's Up on Game is the group that I am working for, and really love LeVar Arrington and the guys allowing me to do this podcast and use my experiences and everything I've done over my 40 some years in college football. I can pass this on to you guys. So appreciate that. And this is podcast number 1. And who better to get on this show than the guru of the internet recruiting world, Brandon Huffman from 24/7 Sports and CBS Digital. Is that right, Brandon?
That's it.
Okay. We go back a ways. Now, I was at UCLA from 96 to 2002-ish. And I think, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, we met about 2003.
Yep.
And we met right when the kind of the scout.com was kind of growing in the first scout.com before Rivals and everybody kind of changed places. But we met back then. So what I wanted to do is give me a little history of the beginning of the internet football recruiting from back when we met and how all of that kind of came and your role in it.
Yeah, so I'm a historian by nature, so I like to look back at the glory years of college football, and the glory years of internet recruiting really started when they got going in about 96, 97. In fact, not to pat you on the back here, Andy, but one of the first things I remember reading about was you were Tom Lemming's Pac-12, or I think you were his national recruiter of the year. And that was right about in the 97, 98 year, the class of 98, I think was the first class that really had, their recruitment covered digitally. In the old days, you would wake up and on the Thursday after signing day, you'd go get your USA Today and you'd read everybody's list. By 1998, you could go into AOL chat rooms, you could go on to CompuServe boards and maybe find out about guys a little bit earlier. And the 1998 class, I always think it's like kind of the most pivotal class in a recruiting history, because that was really the first one that their moves were somewhat documented by the internet. Not as much as it is now, but that's what really got going. The next year, the original Rivals.com, which was founded by a guy named Jim Heckman, University of Washington grad, produced a magazine. And I remember reading about this in this magazine. DJ Williams is on the cover. Class of 2000. In the summer of 1999, the first magazine came out. And that year, there was the Hula Bowl for high school kids. And that was really when the internet started to see its ascension in recruiting. I remember reading the West Coast story by this guy named Greg Biggins, who I had read some stuff of his on those websites. And then over the next few years, the .com bubble burst, worldwide, and Rivals went out of business. And a guy named Shannon Terry and another guy named Bobby Burton bought the Rivals name in bankruptcy court, started what you now know as the Rivals 2.0, if you will. And later on that year, Jim Heckman started another company called The Insiders, which eventually became Scout.com, with the same engineers that started the original Rivals. And then that got us to about 2003. And at that time, there was Rivals.com, and then there was The Insider/Scout.com. Before ESPN had even gotten in the game, before 24/7 Sports existed, before On3 existed. And Shannon Terry, who bought Rivals, ended up starting both of those companies. But that was all it was in 2003. And I crossed paths with you I remember the first time we actually met was I was at a UCLA recruiting event in 2002, and you were sharing about that class. And a year later, you were doing the scouting service. We were at the UCLA camp. Carl Durrell was in his first year of coach, and that was my first summer covering recruiting full time. And you were at that point where the guy, the eyes, the brains behind so much evaluation out west, and that was when our paths first crossed.
I remember those good times, and even going back into the 96 days with student sports. Mm-hmm. And that group with Greg Biggins. And I figured it out early. And it took coaches a longer time to come to trust and believe in the internet recruiting. And I got to be friends with Greg Biggins and you, even before you, with Greg and some of the other guys. And I realized how valuable it was to be friends with those guys, because as a recruiting coordinator, I always thought the most important thing for me was to know everything. Mm-hmm. Right? I needed to know everything about every player, every guy across the country, all the different things, their families and everything else. And Greg was such a great resource, whether I was talking to him directly, and sometimes it was after he got off a call with somebody, and not to rock the apple cart, but you'd learn things from those kind of conversations. And then I started reading even the message boards that can be a little bit like the Wild Wild West. You still pick stuff up because they have insider knowledge. And it took me a while. It was several years before I got our staff at UCLA dragging them into the internet, and they were, screaming and clawing their way. But it really was something that helped all of us in the recruiting process. And you've been a great resource. So Brandon Huffman, just to give you an idea of this guy's background and what he is, Brandon is the national recruiting editor for 24/7 Sports. And that is and he's done that for several years. Prior to that, he was Scout Media Network. And so he's kind of the guru, in my opinion, nationally. And I'm going to ask you in a second about how this process works for you as the director of this national resource that it is, and how this all works. But you're also the executive director, co-founder of Avery Huffman DIPG Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about Avery?
Yeah, if you look over my, I guess this is my right shoulder, you can see a couple of jerseys on the wall. Avery Strong. You see a picture that says Bravery. Avery was my third child with my wife, Amanda. She was born in 2008, perfectly healthy, rambunctious little child. In the summer of 2015, and I'll never forget, I was at a UCLA camp and I was at a USC camp earlier that week. I got a text message from my wife saying that she had an inverted eye. And thinking nothing of it, maybe she needed glasses. We took her to a ophthalmologist who said we need to do an MRI. And what we thought was just an issue with her eye from a vision standpoint turned out to be a terminal brain tumor that she was diagnosed with on June 30th, 2015. And for 7.5 months, she fought brain cancer. The specific tumor she had was known as DIPG. There's no comeback. There's no rally point. There is essentially end of life type of diagnosis and prognosis, and being told, go make a lifetime of memories. Not, hey, we could do surgery this day, we could do that this day. This is your time frame you're looking at. And she fought valiantly and bravely for 7.5 months before her body just succumbed to it. And in February of 2016, she passed away at the age of 7. And 3 months after that, my wife and I, so moved by, the love and support we got worldwide, but also driven by just the horribleness of the disease, we established our foundation in her name, the Avery Huffman DIPG Foundation. And in about 6 years, even with the worldwide pandemic, we've raised nearly $1 million that has gone specifically to research, to professors around the world. We donated her tumor in her brain to Stanford University. So, I like to lighten people's moods by saying, oh yeah, I have one daughter at the University of Washington, and my other daughter's brain got into Stanford. And then they're like, wow. And then they hear the whole story, and then they're not sure to laugh. And I'm like, it's okay. You can laugh. That's why I said it.
Right.
But her tumor has been, used in nearly 40 hospitals worldwide in 4 different continents, universities all around the United States. And we're driven, neither my wife and I do that as our full-time job, but we spend full-time hours making people aware of this disease and raising support and awareness for the disease, more importantly, for the doctors that are doing their best to find a cure for this. So that's our passion. That's our why. What I do in the football world puts the roof over our head, but what motivates me each and every day is sharing her story of her bravery and raising awareness for this disease. So no other family has to hear, go make a lifetime of memories.
Yeah. And I wanted you to be able to talk about Avery and the foundation. I think if folks go to any of our Twitter pages, I'm at R. Taylor FB Scout, and at your Twitter page and many, many coaches around the country, you're going to see hashtag Avery Strong. And
yes,
we are all in support of Brandon and Amanda and the family, and just wanted to be sure that got put into the talk. So again, here with Brandon Huffman, 24/7 Sports recruiting director. And what I want to do now is go into the nuts and bolts of this recruiting process. Mm-hmm. And you're my first guy on this podcast because of this is the world that promotes football recruiting. It is 24/7 Sports and what you guys do. And just some questions about how this comes about, and just start off, how much videotape do you watch?
Too much, and I remember when I first started in this job in 2003, it still was videotape. It was actual hard VHS tapes. And a couple of years later, we had these newfangled things called DVDs that you could make your own DVD. You didn't just buy them from the store, but you can now burn a copy of your highlights onto a DVD player. And the only way you could upload it to the internet was via the DVD player. Well, I still had coaches that were sending me VHS tapes. And you would go on the road to a lot of these schools when you started working with us at Scout, and you'd get the VHS tapes and you'd hand me a big pile at a combine, and I would bring those home and I would upload them from a VHS tape onto a DVD so I could put this very low resolution video onto the web. Now Huddle makes everybody got a highlight tape. And, you miss those days where the coach only made videotapes for the real prospects on the team. You go to a game and there'd be 2 guys that had VHS tape of film because those were the only 2 guys the coach thought was good enough. Now you get schools that have freshman film that are sending you a highlight. Hey, watch my freshman film. Like, bro, I'm not watching film when there's 8 people in the stands, no stickers on your helmet, the jerseys are too long, and it's during the day because that's freshman film. I learned nothing. But there's a lot of video to watch. Huddle, Quick Cut, YouTube, quick Twitter videos. It feels like all you do all day at times is watch video.
And you get so much sent to you, I'm sure. But why don't you give us your Twitter handle so you can get some more?
Yeah, so Twitter handle is at Greg Biggins. You can text me at Greg Biggins. You can email me at greg.biggins@CBS, and I'll be more than happy to watch it. I know it's weird that he and I share an email address and a Twitter page. But no, that's always been our running joke. If you like the rankings, then we did it. If you don't, then Greg is to blame for it.
and Greg's one of the best. And let me stop here because you're a great evaluator. I don't want anyone to miss the fact that you are in the media, but you're a great evaluator. And I trust your opinion as much as, and I do Greg's as well. And not everybody in this business can evaluate, and so give us an idea of what you want to see out of a player if a young kid's watching, or maybe a parent is watching. What should they be doing? What should they put on their highlight video?
Well, the first thing we're looking at, and I remember learning this from a guy named Randy Taylor, 20 years ago, is don't be a stat scout. Don't look at the stats to determine if a player is a good football player. Watch the tape, watch the film, see if he can play. There's a lot of guys that have very misleading stats. They're putting up big numbers because they maybe are in a conference that just isn't good, or they're putting up numbers because the system calls for it. But that doesn't mean that you're a college football prospect. So you're looking for projectable traits: height, speed, weight, projection, flexibility, athleticism. You're looking to see if, this guy who's a big guy, is this offensive lineman, is he a waist bender? Is he a knee bender? Is there flexibility? Is there short area quickness? Can he move laterally? When you're watching a safety, what's his back pedal like? What are his hips like? What's his ability to come downfield, make a hit? Can he run? Can he move? Can he move sideline to sideline? So you're not looking at the result of the play. You're looking at how the player is playing in that play, how he projects. Can this guy run well enough to play against Power 5 receivers? Can this offensive lineman play, is he athletic enough to block Power 5 edges? Can this interior guy with maybe short arms still make the blocks necessary, get to the second level? What is the quarterback's ability to read plays, or read defenses, diagnose plays, and make all the throws? We could see a lot of guys throw a 3-yard slant that goes for a touchdown, and it might be a 70-yard touchdown in the stat book, but he threw it 3 yards because he can't throw it 4. So it's the projectable traits to the next level. Do they have the physical ability? Do they have the traits necessary to play at the collegiate level? I don't care if you scored a touchdown. I don't care, if you had an interception. Is what did you do in the play leading up to the interception, and how do you look physically in order to make those plays?
And I think the thing about the highlight video that's as important as anything else is it tells the college coach, I want to watch more.
Yes.
I want to see game film. I want to see him in person. I want to do this, invite him up for an unofficial visit. So in my opinion, you tell me if I'm right, the highlight video is the first step and probably the most important step to get this process started for an athlete.
It's one of those things where the old adage, a highlight play or a highlight film gets you recruited, game film gets you offered. And now that's changed a lot in recent years. Now we're seeing schools that are offer first, evaluate second. So the offers don't carry the weight that they did. I remember when I first started in this job in 2003, you could talk to a player in May of his junior year, and he can be one of the elite players in the country. The first class I covered, UCLA and USC, were the only 2 schools I was covering recruiting for. And they were both recruiting this running back from Texas named Adrian Peterson. He was one of the few players in the country that had offers in the spring of his junior year. That was back when Mac Brown used to have the biggest junior day in the country, and Texas would offer guys the Saturday after signing day. And the junior year, you would get your first offer, and you were special if you got an offer that soon after signing day for the class before you. And that same year, I remember talking to a running back out of Oakland in that same class named Marshawn Lynch, and he only had a few offers in the spring, but the senior year still mattered. Now you have players that are getting offers at middle school before they ever take a snap of varsity ball, and the school, there's no accountability, so the school can make the offer and say, yeah, if we're here in 4 years, maybe we'll take him. If he's not good in 4 years, we'll say, well, it was a verbal offer. The reality is a lot of assistant coaches aren't there from the time they offer a kid that age. So there's no checks and balances. And it's usually this time of year where the kid that had maybe the offers from the Power 5 schools, all of a sudden they're starting to commit to FCS schools or, taking walk-ons. But the old days was the film mattered. You had to come to camp in summer for those coaches to see you at their tackle, their full padded camp over 3 days. I remember the first UCLA camp that I covered, watching there was a junior offensive lineman there named Eben Britton, and out of Burbank, and he was going into his junior season. A year later, started to get recruited, went to Arizona, ended up being drafted, and he was kind of a unicorn because the coaches spent a lot of time with him, but he was just barely going into his junior season. Now, guys going into the junior years, they don't need to camp. They have 20 offers under their belt. But those days, you had to get evaluated in person by a school, for the most part, for them to pull the trigger on offering you. And those camps were huge. The coaches used to be able to go to the Nike camps back then, which are now known as the opening regionals. There was no club 7-on-7. There were no lineman camp. It was all basically college camps, the old Reebok student sports camps, and student sports had the Nike camps. And those are kind of those were the mothership. Those were where your life could change in an instant.
Yeah. We're here with Brandon Huffman, from 24/7 Sports and being brought to you by Up on Game. And it's a great organization. I'm now a part of their team, and LeVar Arrington and these guys have all really been good to me, and have this opportunity to help folks learn about recruiting, especially from an expert like Brandon Huffman. And you were talking about offers and commitments and things. What's a non-committable or what's that mean?
Yeah, so you have what a lot of these offers are called, like, neighborhood relations in our offers, where, hey, we're offering you because I grew up with your uncle, or I played with your dad, or we really like this kid on your team that's 10 times better than you, but you're his ride to the games and practices. So we're going to let you go tweet your offer, post it on Instagram, but don't try to commit to us because we're not going to take you. And you're probably going to play small college ball. Those are uncommittable offers where it's about a graphic, it's about, social media, and maybe to help you, do a solid to your family or to your coach to help you get recruited by the smaller schools when they see a bigger school recruiting you. Then you have the committable offers, where if the coach offers you, he's saying, we will take your commitment. We really, really want you to be here. Not, hey, here's an offer. We'll see how you progress. Now, you'll even have guys that have committable offers, but they're still their senior year to play, or there's their junior year to play. Maybe their play is reverting instead of progressing. And, maybe they got hurt. Maybe, the coach has changed, but even the committable offers don't always stick. So you see a lot of offers that go out that you're like, there's no way that guy's good enough to play at that school. Well, yeah, the school realizes that too, and they're not offering him for the opportunity for him to come play there. It's usually a favor being done, or it's to help him out, or it's, we're going to monitor you more and then see if you become good enough to play here before we would take your commitment.
Yeah, and we're coming up on one of those important times now with the early signing, right, Brandon? Mm-hmm. The starts December 19th, isn't that the
Wednesday, December 21st? It goes until December 23rd, the following Friday.
21st it's always a Wednesday.
Yes,
21st to the 23rd. And is that the JC as well?
JC can sign as well. Then the transfer portal, you kind of have a little bit more flexibility. But the high school, which is what we traditionally have always covered, and the JUCOs, because if you remember, up until the fall of 2017, JUCOs could sign in December, and then you would have the early enrollees would sign intent to enroll. They didn't sign an NLI; they signed enrollment papers. And with so many guys trying to graduate early, and with recruiting expediting, the NCAA decided to move to, instead of it always being the first Wednesday of February, they decided to have two signing periods: the early signing period, and then 6 weeks later, the traditional National Signing Day. That first year is probably 65% signed in December, 40% signed in February. And each year it's gotten progressively more signed in December and less signed in February, to the point now where I'd say it's probably 90% 10, because guys don't want to lose their spot with the NCAA transfer portal.
Yeah, and that kind of takes me into that transfer portal discussion. Give us a sense of how much that's changed your world and the high school athlete and the JC athletes world, that transfer portal.
Yeah,
I don't even think the NIL is worth bringing into this, but transfer portal is key.
So here's one thing that's common misconception I keep seeing, in that the transfer portal is killing high school recruiting. No, it's not, because last I checked, if a guy is leaving a school, then that school now has a scholarship open. Now, they may offer it to a guy in the portal instead of a high schooler, but they're essentially making transactions across. If I lose a guy to the portal, I'm probably going to go fill that spot in the portal. But that spot was already filled once by a high schooler. They may be offering less high schoolers and going into the portal, but that's partly because they've lost so many players of their own into the portal. But here's the thing. There's still the same amount of 85 scholarships in FBS football. There's still the 63 scholarships in the FCS, the 40 plus in Division II. Division III doesn't offer football-based scholarships, but there's financial aid. There's still those same spots being filled. What it's doing, though, is in the old days, Randy, when you were at UCLA, you would maybe go after the Deshaun Fosters, the Robert Thomases, but you would go find a project, a guy that maybe needed a year or two to develop, to become a guy, a Joseph Efsiak, who might end up being better than people thought he would be and ends up being a multi-year starter. But,
Russian Orthodox, baby.
There you go. And then future defensive lineman, too, when he was there. But everybody wants a Mike Safer at the time. And for you people that don't know what we're talking about, we're going back to the 90s. Like I said, I love classic college football. But you would go get a project or three in a 25-man class. You would stash them for 3 years. Redshirt them, strength and conditioning program them. There was no training table that was like it is now. You would hope they would eat the right food and that by their redshirt junior year, they could contribute. All right. Those days are done. Now instead of going and developing a guy, you're trying to find a transfer portal guy for the immediate help because those developmental guys haven't cracked the depth chart and now they're leaving. So you need to fill that spot because you were counting on there to be that redshirt junior at left tackle. Well, now you're going and getting a guy who's a redshirt junior out of the portal. You're still selling high schoolers. You're still trying to sign high schoolers. But the other thing that the portal's done is that it's lowered the Power 5 levels reliance on projects. And that's now meaning that group of 5 schools are getting a better caliber player than they did before. And it means, more importantly, that FCS schools are getting a better caliber player than before. It's no surprise now that you're seeing FCS kids go into the portal. In the last week, there's been 3 guys in the state that I live in, and 2 one played at Eastern Washington, one played at Idaho State. They were both multi-year starters at Eastern Washington. They made it to the national championship game his freshman year. Idaho State hasn't been good. The Idaho State guy goes into the portal. He's got 15 offers. Oklahoma offered him this week. Washington State, he's a Spokane native, has offered him. Arizona State, where his old head coach at Idaho State went to be a coach, has offered him. So he went from being at one of the worst programs in the FCS to now Oklahoma is offering him a position to be wide receiver 1. The other kid at Eastern, his receivers coach at Eastern Washington now is the receivers coach at Fresno State. He graduated. He's got another year. Now Power 5 schools wanted him. He was supposed to visit Mississippi State this weekend. Doesn't look like that's going to happen, but now he's got Power 5 schools coming at him. So JUCOs are almost being replaced, if you will, by the FCS schools because FCS schools could have a guy who's a star for 2 or 3 years and he wants to go make one more year of impact at the Power 5 level. And those Power 5 schools are offering Ivy League grads. They're offering FCS players, and those guys are coming in and playing. Pac-12 this year had a starting quarterback for all 12 games out of the FCS, and Cameron Ward, who was at Incarnate Word, and now he's at Washington State, and he's been the starter, and he was basically the starter from the day he got there. So the FCS is life-changing now. You can go there, and you have a chance to be recruited, but high school kids want to play at the Power 5 schools, so it's kind of a recalibration when they get down to signing day and they realize, man, these Power 5 schools aren't coming. I may have to go to the FCS school. But yeah, you're probably going to get on the field quicker, and now you might have a chance to still go Power 5, but at least you got 3 years of playing.
Yeah, and I'm confused by what you just talked about, but I get the point that they want kids that can come in and play already and are ready to play. So the freshmen that are coming in, there's no more red shirts to let them, like you said, get better. It's time to go. And so that's an important part. And one thing I wanted to do, and this is from Up on Game, Brandon, from LeVar and the group, and from Taylor Scouting, is we want to donate $2,500 to your daughter's foundation.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And so we'll get that worked out off camera and make sure that gets done. So I appreciate it. And last thing before we kind of let you go on here, when is the 2024 class important?
I would say the 2024 class really starts getting important in January. And here's why. Right now, you have coaches that are trying to recruit their own roster, keep guys from going in the portal, or talk the guys that have gone into the portal out of staying in it and coming back to school. Maybe encouraging some guys to go into the portal, trying to do their in-home visits with the 2023 class, put the final touches on their 2023 class. And a lot of these cases, in the case of 75 of them, also prepare for a bowl. There's, I think, 7 bowl games this weekend. That means there's 14 schools that don't even get to partake in-home visits this week or host official visits over the weekend because they're in outposts like Las Vegas or Mobile or Myrtle Beach playing in a bowl game. So they've been affected in a sense by that. The majority of these classes will sign in December. Then in January, when the dead period ends, the dead period goes into play. The window for the transfer portal closes. So January is now, in the old days, it used to be when the final in-home visits happened before you had the February signing day. Now, January, these coaches are out on the road and they're not really looking at 2023s. They filled any of their available spots for the portals. Now they're going to basketball games to watch 2024s and 2025s. They're going to workouts at the school to watch the 2024s and the 2025s. They're almost spending all of January as kind of an early sneak peek at the evaluation period, which begins in April. So the 2024s, a lot of them are, there's not a lot of attention coming my way. Yeah, because these coaches are trying to keep their roster secure or kind of weed out some of the players that aren't going to contribute, lock up their 2023 class. And then after the new year, that's when they'll start to worry about you. But that's earlier than the old days. Like we said, Mac Brown used to do junior day the Saturday after signing day. And that was the first time the juniors would even almost get mentioned. Now it's like you have the whole month of January before the signing day where these coaches don't care about the 2023s anymore. They care about the 2024. So I would say January is when you really start to see it ramp up.
Well, one last question for you, Brandon, we'll let you get going, is the underclassmen, the 2027, the 2026 and 25 classes, what should they be doing right now?
I would say, for the 2027s, worry about who you're taking to the 8th grade dance. Worry about, making sure that your jersey fits you when you get to high school. You're not in high school yet. Start working out this spring, but don't have your dad go and threaten these schools that if you're not going to play as a freshman, they're going to leave. There still needs to be some time to develop. You don't need to go to the big college camps. I hear this all the time from middle school parents, which I rarely try to talk to because I want to wait till they get to high school, but you don't want your kid to go to a camp before he's physically ready. Now, there's a lot of guys that are holdbacks. They're 16 when they're a freshman. I turned 16 6 weeks before my junior year in high school started. But you don't want to get to a camp before you're physically ready, because what you can do is hurt your recruitment. You could go to a camp, look so overwhelmed because you're just physically not there and mentally you're not ready. And a coach is saying, we're never going to recruit this kid. Or you get in your head because you see how well everybody else is playing and you're not performing, and you start to doubt your ability. I would say if you're a 2026, hey, it wouldn't hurt to maybe go to a camp or two this spring. The Sacramento State Mega Camp is my favorite camp to go to. Of all the college camps, all 12 Pac-12 schools are there. Every Mountain West school is there. Sac State, Smart, they're the only Big Sky school that's there. But there's 2,500 players that come over the course of 2 days. They have a freshman to be, a sophomore to be session at the camp. Those are good just to get a little bit of experience from these college coaches. But it's more about being patient and realize that unless you're a genetic freak of nature, the coaches really aren't going to start paying all that much attention to 95% of a class that they will sign 3 years later until the fall of their sophomore year.
That's great stuff, Brandon. I think we've helped a lot of kids and a lot of parents who need to hear all these things. I really appreciate you coming on with us. Brandon Huffman, 24/7 sports director, recruiting director, and remember, #Avery Strong. Love you, brother.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Thank you for your guys' gift too.
Hey guys and gals, subscribe to Up on Game Presents on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, look forward to seeing you soon.